Ladies and gentlemen, freaks and geeks, brothers and sisters around the world, it is I, Krishul, your chocolate Nubian soul brother, disseminating my wisdomatic truth bombs up in here as I do. I wanted to discuss a topic that I see trending, particularly amongst the younger generation, and that is the topic of, ready for it? Wait for it. Libertarianism. Now, I know a lot of people, when they hear the word libertarianism, they think of a political ideology, and everyone has strong views on politics. And this is true to some extent. In the United States, outside of being a Democrat or being a Republican, the most popular political ideology is libertarianism. However, it is not just a political ideology. In fact, it's not really a political ideology. It is the only political ideology as such that is a moral philosophy, is based off of morality. Now, I know a lot of people, when they hear the word morality, they're thinking that morality is subjective. There is no right and wrong. Therefore, it is a false claim. And what you're saying is true if you look at morality from the perspective of the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people. From that perspective, it is okay to pass laws that will bring about the most amount of good. Therefore, considering that the most amount of violence in the world takes place between people aged 18 to 24, we pass a law that says that if you were 18 to 24, you should not be allowed out past 10 p.m. in order to bring about the least amount of violence. Or it is acceptable, my classic example, to kill people, to steal their money, to rape people because you are trying to minimize the violence in the world. You are trying to ensure the safety of the population. Now, if this is your mindset towards morality, then yes, morality is subjective, because there is no way of definitively knowing what is going to bring about the most amount of good. Whether or not you are a politician, you are a soothsayer, whether or not you are an intellectual, I do not care who you are. You can only deal in terms of probability. You cannot know what is going to bring about the most amount of good, because we are dealing in the future, and the future is unknown. The future doesn't even exist. All there is the present moment. Therefore, all you can do is make decisions on the present. And if you're willing to compromise the present moment to bring about the most amount of good, then at the end of the day, you're fucked. Because even when you get to the most amount of good, which is unknown, if you were lucky enough to arrive at that, you have a wake of broken souls. You have destroyed people's lives, like Genghis Khan, like Hitler, in order to get to the most amount of good. If your concept of morality is inclusive of things such as greed, of character, for instance, if someone is incredibly greedy and has a lot of money, has worked hard for it, and decides to keep that money to himself, therefore it becomes acceptable to violate their rights, to steal from them in order to give that money to the poor, or what often happens, give it to the rich. If it is acceptable to do that, and you look at morality in terms of character, which is true to some extent, however, it does not give someone the right to violate their rights in order to bring about good. But if that is your perspective, then yes, morality is subjective. However, if your concept of morality is that you believe you should do to others as you would like done to yourself, then you believe in the universality of right and wrong. Regardless of what culture you are in, what your indoctrination is, we accept that it is universally wrong. The four universal truths, it is wrong to rape someone. In fact, Aristotle said that upon any philosophical moral ideology, you must ask yourself the question, is rape acceptable in that ideology? That's a way of determining whether or not the ideology is a good one, because rape is such a vile, horrible thing that if it was acceptable within an ideology, that ideology must be completely false. Assault, theft, fraud. So if I say that I'm going to pay you $100 to do a particular job, and I decide to pay you $50 after you've done the job, that's fraud. At the end of the day, even if you do not believe these things are right and wrong, clearly you do not want these things done to you. And of course, people say it's acceptable to violate these things depending on the circumstance. It's acceptable to steal from someone if they have stolen from you. It's acceptable to hit someone if they've assaulted you. Yes, 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 true, 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 true. However, the beauty of libertarianism is that there is the phrase, the initiation of violence. It is the most beautiful two words, the initiation, or three words, the initiation of violence that has ever been concocted in philosophy. Because within that, you are saying that the person that starts the violent action is the wrongdoer. Therefore, if someone breaks into your house, someone steals you of your security as far as something that you own, your place of residence, then you have a right to use the necessary force in order to thwart that violent action. And when I say violence, I'm not just talking about physical violence. I'm talking about theft, rape, and all of the things that you would not want done to yourself. If someone starts that, you have a right to respond with the necessary amount of force in order to thwart that violent action. That's why it comes down to the initiation of violence. This is essentially what libertarianism is. People that do not believe in the initiation of violence, regardless of whether or not people want to call themselves anarchists or voluntarists, another term that I love using, fall in love with, ultimately these people do not believe in the initiation of violence. Anarchism, which is another popular term that I love seeing, is essentially derived from the word an, which means without, and archon, which means rulers, without rulers. People that believe that you own yourself and there are no authority figures. And essentially, when I say that, of course we should listen to other people, provided they are not violating our rights, provided they are not committing fraud, theft, rape, assault. People do not believe, regardless of who you're dealing with, regardless of whether or not it's the state, the government, that these people have the right to bestow rights upon to other people that they do not have. Because essentially we are all equal along the lines of having the same rights. Therefore, you cannot have authority figures that have more rights, that are more equal than you are. That is what anarchism is all about. No rulers. You do not have people that have a right to violate you. Voluntarism is essentially saying that everything should be done voluntarily. People should not have the right to coerce people into doing things. So coercive violence, putting a gun to your head, saying that you're going to be locked up in jail unless, of course, you do X, Y, and Z. That we all must behave voluntarily unless, of course, someone is violating your rights. So essentially, regardless of what ideology you want to identify with, anarchism, voluntarism, even veganism, bearing in mind, with veganism, at least in the current model, the only issue that I have is with the concept of exploitation, in that if something is voluntary, in human interaction, if two people consent towards doing something, consent towards martial arts, consent towards having a form of exchange, regardless of whether or not you see that interaction as being exploitative, as being unfair, they still have a right to do that. In regards to animal exploitation, granted with animals, consent is a difficult issue because animals cannot express themselves. Animals can express themselves through action, but not through physical language, through vocal language. However, we need to make an assessment of whether or not they consent to things. I can tell if an animal wants to do something, and ultimately, if you feel as if an animal does not want to do something consensually, then you should not force it to do that. Clearly, animals don't want to die. Clearly, animals do not want to have their udders milked in day out. And if that is clear in a situation, then it should not be done. It all has to do with consent. But if you want to say that exploitation is a situation where someone is using someone and gaining something that is of a greater level, then that ideology does not work. But essentially, ultimately, all ideologies that are in line with morality come down to the initiation of violence, that you do not have a right to initiate violence. It comes down to the non-aggression principle. And there is no part-time libertarianism. One of the things I often hear is people saying things like, I believe in libertarianism along the lines of social issues, but when it comes to other issues, I'm more conservative. It's like saying I'm a vegetarian, but I like to eat pork on Sundays. Or I'm a pacifist, however, if someone is a girl, I'll beat the fuck out of him. It doesn't work. Libertarian is a principle, and the whole idea of principle is that which comes first. You do not violate this ever. It is the concept of inalienable rights, that which you own, that which is, cannot be changed.
Life's purpose is to feel joy. Metaphysical, lyrical, saying enough for truth. The only one that makes change is walking in your shoes. Be the example, don't complain about the news. Making music and serving the world with the loo. Now you can be the same, or you can be the change. Find strength from inside, break through the chains. No one to blame, nothing to prove. You create your reality.